Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the ACHA Power Play here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. You can find us on our YouTube channel, the 12-Ounce Sports Network on YouTube. You can watch us live as you're doing right now on X at the Real Captain Lou, or and also at our 12-Ounce Sports channel or our feed on X. You can also follow us on the Captain Lou Extravaganza Facebook page, and of course, my personal Facebook page, Lewis Gamlin. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We're going to do something a little different here tonight. One of our ACHA trailblazers, we're going to do a retrospect, if you will, kind of a look back at the life and the career of one of the mainstays of the ACHA, Mike Petrusma, longtime head coach of Calvin University. Again, worked with the ACHA for decades. He spent 28 years as the head coach of the Calvin University Knights at the D1 and D3 level. He passed away over the weekend at the age of 61. Just a sudden loss for us. He's, a great coach. We mentioned a trailblazer, a great friend, but an even better husband, father, grandfather, you name it. He's going to be missed in the ACHA. And so we thought we would take the time tonight, a good portion of the show. We're going to bring in a bunch of guests here. We're going to start out shortly with Mark VanVliet's going to stop on by, longtime director of hockey operations for Aquinas, a rival of Calvin, if you will, in Grand Rapids, but an alum of Calvin. He knew Mike for over 40 years, knew him as a student when he first came to Calvin. So it'll be fun to talk to Mark. He'll regale us, as he always does, with some great stories and great memories. Craig Barnett, the director of hockey the executive director of the ACHA, is going to stop by at the bottom of the hour, 7:30. And then a little bit later on, Gary Astalos, the head coach of the defending Division I Adrian Bulldogs men's champion. He's going to stop by, colleague of Mike's, and he's also the head coach of the select team going to Torino in Italy in January of 2025. So we'll talk to Gary about that as well. And in the last portion of our show, blessed as always when we can get a chance to talk to one of the all-time greats, media personalities of the ACHA, storyteller, host of the 5-Minute Major at the Nationals, the little interview segments that he does, Dr. Rasty McGibbon. So he knew Mike very well, and they had a chance to go overseas to Romania. So we're going to dedicate this program to Coach Petrusma, him and his family. Our thoughts and prayers obviously go out to his family, to Josh and all the family there. I got to know Mike back in 2015, 2016 season when I first started doing play-by-play for Aquinas and starting this podcast back in 2016. This is the 9th season of doing this. And one of the first coaches I interviewed on the show was Coach Petrusma. I met him as we were getting set to do the broadcast of the national tournament when they were still in separate locations back in Grand Rapids. And I remember being a little nervous when I talked to Mike at first, never met him. And couldn't have been more gracious, always gracious. And with Mike, when you talk hockey or anything, especially Calvin, you could talk for hours with him. He was just, his eyes lit up when you talked about his family and about hockey, and especially at the ACHA level. He's done so much with that program. 520, 210, and 37. That was his record in 28 years as a coach at Calvin at the D1 and D3 level. Started out at the Division III level, of course, in 2004, the national champions. Last year, they had a 20-year reunion of that team. A lot of players came back for that, and not a surprise. And everybody, there's been so many tributes on social media for Mike, a lot of remembrances, and he touched many lives in the Grand Rapids community, in the Calvin University community, and of course, worldwide in the ACHA with his all the work that he did. As we mentioned, he was the head coach of the Romanian team at the World University Games just last year in 2023. And I know talking to him before and after that, he was on the show talking about it. He was So excited, and more excited for the kids, I think, than anything else. And he was a part of the select teams that played in all-star games, back in 2012 and whatnot. So without any further ado, let's bring in our first guest. Longtime friend of Coach Petrusma, longtime friend of the show here, my tag team partner on many broadcasts. We always had a blast with those. Mark VanVliet. Mark, thanks for taking time out tonight to be with us. How are you?
Lou, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. It's always a privilege to connect with you.
Well, obviously the main focus of tonight is, a longtime friend of yours, a trailblazer in the ACHA, Coach Mike Petrusma, with his passing early Saturday morning. It's, I mentioned you had told me the other day or yesterday when we were on the phone that you knew Mike for 40 years, and you knew him as a student when he first came to Calvin back in the day.
I did. And, he came as a freshman to Calvin. I was working with the Calvin hockey program as just a goaltender coach, and I had a chance to, obviously meet Mike, but and then, family duties sort of took me away for a number of years, but we reconnected, and just always a pleasure. Mrs. Smile, big shock, but on his passing, but obviously we're here tonight to celebrate his life. But knew him for many, many years.
I met him the first year that I was doing your games back. Oh gosh, it was 9-10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was such a great rivalry, and it still is with Calvin and Aquinas. It's a great, healthy rivalry. But back then, when both teams were in Division III, two powerhouses. I know they went to a few national tournaments before that, but boy, we sure had some great games to call, especially both teams going to Columbus to play in that championship game in 2017. Mark, I still think if they would have played that at Van Andel, we could have probably got 4,000 or 5,000 people there.
I think you're right, Lou. That was a special time then, at the height of MCHC and Division III. You remember those great teams from Oakland and Adrian Gold and Hope and Calvin, and then obviously Aquinas. Those were great. There was a period of time there between 2012 and 2017-18 where it was just it was just a fantastic period of hockey. For the not only MCHC, ACHA, but Division III was at its absolute zenith, and great memories.
Mark started off, he coached for 28 years at Calvin. What a lot of people don't know is that he coached at Grand Valley for a few years too, way back in the day.
Yeah, Mike was a hockey guy, right?
Yeah.
He came to Calvin in the early 80s, and he was a soccer player for Calvin soccer team, which has a well-established soccer program.
Mm-hmm.
But then he also was a part of the early years of Calvin hockey, and he just you said this in your lead up to your podcast tonight. You called him a trailblazer. I think that's absolutely accurate when it comes to the ACHA and Calvin and what he's contributed. And then when Calvin did their release on Mike's passing, they called him, one of the words they use is passionate. And those are really two great words to describe Mike as I reflect on his memory and his legacy, what he brought to the game. And he was just both a trailblazer in those early days of ACHA, and also passionate Calvin representative. He loved hockey, and he was also passionate about the school. So, those two words should come to mind when I reflect on the legacy of Mike.
And I know you throughout the years with him probably went on many, showcase trips, watching players, and probably a few trips down to Naples and maybe a few sarsaparillas between the two. And
you think so? I'm having a ginger ale right now in his memory. But when we talk about Trailblazer, those early days of the ACHA, even before I became involved with Davenport in 2008 and 9, and then ultimately Aquinas in 2011 and 12. But those early days of the ACHA, it was like the wild, wild west. And, Mike always wanted to legitimize the sport. He wanted to legitimize the sport at Calvin, and he also wanted to legitimize the ACHA. And those were early years. And, there was, and I don't know, Lou, I don't know, recall if you've ever been down to the annual meetings in May, but in those early years, we used to congregate at a hotel called the Florida Gulf Coast Inn in Naples, and there was a tiki bar there. It's a huge place, and the entire ACHA coaches would take over the Florida Gulf Coast Inn hotel, and we would meet in the tiki bar, and Mike would hold court, at a table, and he was very passionate. Of course, now you have hundreds of passionate hockey coaches there, so it would get loud and it would get boisterous, but there was a lot of work done at the tiki bar, and then we would go the next day to the official meetings at the hotel. But we would always joke that more work got done at the tiki bar, and then we would go into the meetings the next day, and we would have all our everything sort of ironed out. But Mike was a trailblazer in the ACHA. He brought legitimacy to the league, certainly to D3 at that time, but and the MCHC, which was just and continues to be the powerhouse of D3, and those were exciting days, and I was proud to be a part of that.
Well, a couple of what really, I was thinking about this the last couple of days, and one thing that I know you and Mike are both proud of is former players of yours following in footsteps in the coaching ranks at your respective universities, with Brandon Roseman, with Rosie coaching at Aquinas, and Austin Heisinger doing a bang up job at Calvin. I had a chance to talk with Mike about this at the beginning of the year, and he in his office, and I said, I forgot that Austin played for you. I said, that's got to make you happy. And he talked for about 45 minutes on that.
Oh, sure.
And that's so great.
Yeah. If you get Mike involved, you start talking with Mike about alumni, just like Jordan and I about the Aquinas alumni. That's just, it's so great to see how these kids, young men go on, and whether they continue to be involved in hockey or they, succeed at their chosen profession. That's really what the satisfaction is. And I know Mike had obviously so many years, 28, 30 years of coaching at Calvin, where he was able to connect with alumni and see their success. And, there were people that, stayed local, but also people that went on to become doctors and lawyers and successful businessmen. And, that's what things, when you talk to Mike, that's what he really took pride in is, they contributed, they had there was goals and goals they scored and victory, and there was defeat and heartbreak and celebrations. But at the end of the day, what he loved to talk about was, hey, how this guy went on, and now he's a doctor, and he's up in Nova Scotia, and he's practicing pediatric medicine. He used to play for Calvin. That's really where Mike's just eyes would light up. He would just love to talk about alumni.
And I want to go back to 2017. Both teams were so good. And that run that year. I mean, obviously with you guys at Aquinas, you almost didn't make it out of the region that year. You had to play in East Lansing. I remember that. But
we had to slog through the we weren't given the auto bid, or we nothing was given to us. I remember, boy, I think it was Lawrence Tech beat
Yes.
Hope like 1-0 in overtime or something like that, and then we had to slog through and beat Calvin or beat Adrian or something like that to get into the playoffs. But that was a special year, that 2016-17. And what was so amazing is that Mike and I were so close, even during that year of rivalry, where it was at its absolute zenith.
Yeah.
Because we were both, talking about moving up after that year to Division I. So we had many conversations, not just about what was going on at that time, but what the future would hold.
Yeah.
And Aquinas's last loss, we lost. The last regular season game we lost was to Calvin, and then we went on this amazing winning streak.
Yep.
And we did not lose a game for the rest of the year, but that culminated in that ACHA championship in Columbus. It was just a special memory. And Mike and I would talk about that often in the years following. About, I think it was 4-3, and it was just a special game. And the whole year was special. And we talked about the rivalry and the developing rivalry between Aquinas and Calvin, and that's what I remember most. So, and getting back to what you talked about, a trailblazer, and one of the things that when Aquinas started the program in 2011, really our athletic director at the time, Terry Beauchamp, he worked with the Calvin athletic director, and I worked with Mike in really, when we developed the program at Aquinas, our model was Calvin and Hope, and with Chris Van Timmeren.
Yeah.
Those were the two. If you're going to begin a program at a faith-based institution like Aquinas and like Calvin and like Hope, we endeavored to model what had the success of Calvin and Hope. And Mike Petrusma and Chris Van Timmeren were both huge mentors of us as we began our program at Aquinas, and we're really champions of Aquinas as we moved into the MCHC, and I'll never forget that. I mean, we were obviously intense rivalries, Calvin and Aquinas.
Yes.
Really intense rivalries, but we're also huge supporters. Mike was a huge supporter of getting Aquinas off the ground, and because he saw the potential, ultimately, which culminated in that 2017 national championship game. But he saw the potential of that rivalry that was two schools 5 miles apart, and just loved that. What that possibility of that rivalry could be, and he was a big supporter of ours as we got our program off the ground. So I never forgot that, and how important he was as we move forward as starting the program at Aquinas. But he also knew that we were going to be very good and we were going to challenge him, but he just relished that challenge. And that's what I remember.
And I remember, unfortunately, COVID doing its number on us in 2020, but you both made the transition to D1. And I remember you were going to play each other in the first round of that tournament. Remember that? Yeah,
it doesn't whatever the level, it always seems that those my time at Aquinas and Mike's time at Calvin, those two schools so close together, it would always intersect with some critical type of game, and that was taken away from us, but obviously that was a lost year, but that would have been fun.
I talked to Mike about this too at the beginning of the year. We were talking about, and you and I have talked about this, Mark, about the level of play, how it's improved even in the 10 years that I've been around and, covering the sport with the ACHA. It's, especially now with the CHL ruling coming out, where I think it's even going to step up the competition's going to, the level of play is going to be even better. But
Yeah.
he was so proud of that too. And I think a lot of that goes by how much effort that you guys all put into that, with the recruiting and just getting the word out,
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about, you in your lead up talked about Trailblazer with the ACHA, and in those early days of the ACHA, it was very much a club mentality.
Yeah.
And what Mike endeavored to do, what he was, passionate about, was bringing a varsity level of approach to the ACHA, and that's what he always championed, was trying to legitimize the ACHA and make it a varsity-like program. So, that's what he always worked on. Is he always was a flag bearer of the ACHA, but he was always trying to elevate the level of the stature and the level of the ACHA, so that because he felt that that was the way forward for him and for the not only his program, but for the Calvin and Hope and Aquinas programs.
Yeah. So you said you knew him when he was a student, when he first came to Calvin. I never asked him this. What did he play? Was he a goalie? Was he a defenseman?
No, he was a lumbering forward. He couldn't skate backwards. He was a big guy that he loved the rough game, but he was short on talent, big on passion, right? So that we always used to have a laugh with him because he'd always find his way in the penalty box.
Does he know that you would say that about him?
Oh, of course he would. We laughed about that for years. We laughed about it for years.
Oh, that's funny.
But he would, he came from Georgetown, Ontario, which is a suburb outside of Toronto. And, his father went to Calvin, as did mine. And, that's where his love of Calvin started. And, when he came to Calvin, he just never, we used to joke, he came to Calvin as a student and he never left, right? So, most people may not remember, but he coached women's soccer, the varsity program from, I think, 89 to 95, something like that. So, he just was a passionate Calvin guy right from the get-go, as it was his father. And that's where he got his love for Calvin.
Well, I got to tell you, it definitely shows, and he helped create this tournament that's coming up here, not this coming weekend, but the following one in Grand Rapids, the Sports Hall of Fame tournament with Calvin and Aquinas and Davenport and Grand Valley. Mark, it's great Grand Rapids college hockey, and it's I encourage everybody to go there to watch it, because this is excellent level hockey. All these teams are very, very good this year. Yeah.
So one of the interesting, sort of sidelights on this, when we talk about Mike and his legacy, how connected, when you talk about Paul Loudon at Davenport, the athletic director, but former head hockey coach there, was instrumental in bringing Calvin and Aquinas, and mentoring Calvin and Aquinas as we both grew our programs. It just still remains a great rivalry, but just one with a ton of respect for each other. Teams will be good or be down, but ultimately everybody supports each other and wants to make each other better. But that's a great tournament with great local rivalries and a great level of talent.
Well, Mark, I appreciate you taking time out to be with us on short notice. It's always fun catching up with you, talking hockey especially. What do you think of our Red Wings so far?
Well, I'm glad I'm not coaching anymore, Lou. I heard Derek Lalonde's on the hot seat.
Oh,
but,
boy.
That's just what professional hockey's, what it's come to. So, I think they're Steve Yzerman is leading in the right direction. I think it's going to take time, with the salary cap and all these other things that are going on. It's so tough to to bring your program back. Back in those early days of Mike Ilitch and pre-salary cap in the 90s, you could buy yourself a championship. Well, that's not true anymore, and you have to sort of work your way back in. And after so long, so I think they're on the right road. I think they're on the right path. It's just going to take a little long. I think the goal this year is to make the playoffs, and we'll see what happens then. But thanks for having me on, Lou. It's always been a privilege. And just bringing it back to Mike. You're going to have some other guests on. I know they're going to talk about Mike, but what impressed me about him, what impressed me about Mike was his passion for Calvin, which I'm alumni of. But he was passionate about Calvin, passionate about the sport, and he was really sort of the guy that brought that together in those early days when Calvin was sort of deciding whether they wanted to continue with hockey or not, or sponsor hockey or not. Mike was really the kind of the glue that brought that thing together, and the work he did and the soil that he tilled for so many years in those early years was just so critical from a Calvin standpoint. But then from an ACHA standpoint, the work that he did was also phenomenal and so needed at that time. And I'm sure that your guests later in the program are going to speak to that as well. But it's tragic that he was taken from us, but his legacy will live on. Absolutely will.
Very well said, Mark. I appreciate it. We'll catch up with you again soon. Maybe we can get you over there for a game. I've got a headset mic waiting with your name on it. How's that sound?
Lou, it would be my privilege. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. My guy will get in touch with your guy. How's that sound?
All right. Thank you.
All right, Mark.
Lou, that means your wife will talk to my wife.
100%. How about that?
Right.
Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you real soon.
You too.
Mark VanVliet, longtime Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College, Calvin alum. Knew Mike Petrusma for 40 years, something to that extent. So, it's again, always a pleasure catching up with Mark. Some big rivalries with Calvin and Aquinas. I was lucky enough, as I mentioned, to start covering hockey with Aquinas here in the Grand Rapids area, right along with Calvin and, as Mark mentioned, Hope and Grand Valley. Got in the teeth of that the heyday. Although the D3 level is still, with the MCHC, the premier conference, and all the in all of America, really. But it's back then those were some knockdown, drag out games and series, and then as Mark mentioned, culminating that last year in 2017 when both teams were at the D3 level before they made their progressions up to D1. And it's we'll talk about it throughout the night. Mike is a trailblazer, or he was a trailblazer with the ACHA. 28 years at Calvin. We talked about him as a soccer coach, 74, 28, and 2. Successful there as well. But another point that Mark mentioned that is absolutely true is he was all about Calvin. And, you would talk about, he would say, hey, have you seen something? Have you seen this and that, whatever sport? Well, let's go back to our guest line and let's bring in the executive director of the ACHA. Always kind enough to join us. Always love catching up with him. Craig Barnett. Craig, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Lou. How are things there?
You know what? Things are doing pretty good here in Michigan. We're avoiding the snowflakes, so can't complain about that.
Okay, well, stay warm, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure. So we always love having you on at this time of the year to kind of just catch up with everything, on your end with the ACHA, and we'll tie it in, with, the unfortunate news that we heard over the weekend of, we like to call him a trailblazer. Mike Petrusma, longtime coach of Calvin, passing away. Craig, he was a very valuable asset to the ACHA and to Calvin. So many great things that he did.
Yeah, it devastated news for sure on Friday when we got it, and it really makes you think, and really hits home with you and what's important. But I've been thinking a lot about it throughout the weekend and so forth, and the ACHA is very special. A lot of people don't leave the ACHA, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
We have board members and people like Paul Loudon that's from up there, and Jim Martin on the board, and Paul Hebert, and I can go on. All those board members have been part of the ACHA for a long time, and that kind of goes back to when Coach Petrusma first came to Calvin and got that program on the map. So it was devastating news. Because he was such a big part of the ACHA, and he impacted a lot of people in the ACHA. And, for me, I've only been part of it this is my 7th year. And, when I think back to my interactions with Coach Petrusma and the Calvin community up there, the one thing that sticks out to me is Coach always had a presence around him. Like, people were he attracted people. I don't know what stories he was telling. But every time you saw him in the lobby or by the locker room or what have you, there was always people surrounding him, and he was loved by a lot of people, and obviously he's going to be greatly missed by all those people, including the ACHA and certainly the Calvin community and everybody up in Michigan there. So, I'm honored to be on your show tonight to talk a little bit about Coach Petrusma. And certainly on behalf of the ACHA, I want to send our prayers and thoughts to the family and the Calvin community.
One of the things I had him on last year, and since I became their play-by-play voice, I've had the privilege of getting to know him a little bit. And I know one of the things that he was really excited about was when he had the chance to coach the team over in Romania. And what an experience that was for you guys. And, that's one of the things I think that has really, I don't know, to me, it stood out with the ACHA, how they've been able to do things like that, Craig, and give not only the coaches and the administrators, but the players a chance to travel overseas and get to these different environments and experiencing that. And I know he was very proud of things like that.
He was, and I was fortunate to be on that trip as well. And as you know, Lou, like, everything that we do is always about the student athletes.
Mm-hmm.
It's always about the student athletes experience and so forth. And I think, when you look at the World Cup of University Hockey, we had that unique opportunity not to only represent the United States, but Canada never had a team going to it. So we were able to, we had 600 players in the ACHA. They were Canadian. So we were able to represent Canada as well. And, Mike's from Georgetown, Ontario,
Mm-hmm.
as I'm sure you know. And I'm from Oakville, Ontario. We're only about 20 miles away.
Wow.
And so for him to be able to go and not only be part of the ACHA, but to represent Canada, that was very, very unique. And as you know, the Canadian team in particular, might have not got off to a great start in that tournament, but certainly finished very strong, losing to the USA team in the championship game. But typical Coach Petrusma style, it's how you finish, not how you start, type of thing. And we weren't sure what was going to happen halfway through that tournament with this team, and somehow they turned in playing their best hockey toward the end.
Boy, I'll tell you, isn't that ironic? After this past Saturday night, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened, but after they announced his passing, the family wanted Calvin's D3 team to still play their game against Hope, and that game didn't quite start out the way the Calvin fans and the players wanted. They were behind 5-2 going into the third period, and lo and behold, they scored the tying goal with 12 seconds left. And one of the more exciting calls that I've had. So now that you bring up that story, boy, that's pretty apropos, isn't it? How a Calvin coach team would come back at the very end to make things very exciting.
Exactly. You seem to have a lot of very energetic calls. In my short time with you, Lou, all your games are very energetic.
When I had Mark VanVliet on before you, and one of the words that he said about Mike was passion. And boy, I'd like to think sometimes I'm passionate, but when it comes to the ACHA, Craig, and hockey, I don't think there was anybody as passionate as Mike was. And he was easy to like, and it was very easy to see that he really cared about the ACHA.
He really did, and I think he did care a lot about a lot of people, but the passion he had and how he cared about his players as well,
Mm-hmm.
and all student athletes was pretty cool. I had a good conversation with Dave Kurtz this weekend, our director of hockey ops, and he was telling me a story about when he first came aboard, and Mike kind of held his hand a little bit on the when he was doing the D2 stuff, when Dave Kurtz was doing the D2 stuff, and he mentioned that Mike always always looking for the solution, and in the business that we're in, this is a solution resolution business. It's certainly for my chair, that's what we spend most of our time on, is trying to find some resolution here. But that seems to be what Mike also did as well, is he took people under his wing and tried to make it easier for them by spending time with them and so forth. So yeah, very, I feel very privileged to have gotten to know him over the past 6.5 years or so. But his legacy will go on.
No doubt about it. One of the things I know, Craig, that he was one of the things he was passionate about, and I know took pride in working with you guys and everything, is the development of how the national tournament has become such a showcase. And leads kind of into my next question. It's about the halfway point of our season. When do you really start taking the full court press now with St. Louis for 25, or are you already on the full court press with that?
We've had a few practice sessions, and now you can say as of 2 weeks ago we're full court press.
Beauty.
We've kind of put our staff together with the St. Louis local organizing committee. We've started our just so you know, what we do is we start usually in October, November, and we have bi-monthly phone calls with all the staff. So we've started those, what we call National Tournament Organizational Committee meetings. So we've had the staff from Centene Community Ice Center, the St. Louis Sports Commission, obviously the ACHA staff. And we meet twice a month, and we have a task list, what's important for us. What we try to do is eliminate all the surprises. And you never can do that, but at the end of the day, we never know how many surprises we did eliminate, because hopefully we were prepared in advance for it, and it also makes it a lot easier when you go back to a host like St. Louis and the St. Louis Blues, that we've done this before. But just because we've done it before doesn't mean it's easy street either, right? We're trying to enhance the overall experience for our student athletes and fans of the tournament. We're looking for new ideas. Social media is a huge piece. Our studio that we set up, and we interview the players and coaches that Dr. Rasty does, brings a lot of value to our event, and we're very excited about the economic impact that the ACHA National Tournament has on the St. Louis community and the St. Louis Blues and everybody in between. So, yeah, we're knee deep in it, because once Christmas hits,
Oh boy.
and it's January, and we have the World University Games this January with our men's and women's team, and you come back from that, and it's it's pretty much M2 regionals, and then it's the national tournament. So, yeah, so we're prepping already. We're talking broadcasters such as yourself and getting all that set up as well with Flow Sports and Flow Hockey, and it's a lot of fun. It's a busy time of year.
Have you gotten your Italian down for Torino?
A few times just to get it. I'm looking forward to tasting that food again.
Oh boy,
drinking a little red wine, and looking forward to a lot of good hockey. That's for sure. Very excited about what our coaching staff. Get Gary Astalos on the men's side, and Lindsay Ellis on the women's side. What the team that they're putting together, and looking forward. One of the big things I enjoyed in Romania was not necessarily watching all the games and stuff, is seeing how the student athletes were reacting to what they were taking in. The experience that they were experiencing. Not just on the ice, but off the ice, and so forth. And looking forward to kind of seeing the look on their faces and how they enjoy and experience this the World University Games in Torino this coming January.
One other thing here before I let you go. One of the things I've been trying to keep up with, and I've seen a lot more of these, Craig, is more of these showcases in the middle of the season. We had the Capper Classic last week in Chicago, which looked like it was a great success, the Big Ten tournament. And then the same weekend, you had some of the elite teams down in St. Louis. I've seen more and more of these weekend, for lack of a better word, showcases and whatnot, featuring a lot of the top teams playing each other. That's such a great way, in my eyes, to really get the word out for the ACHA, really to, again, showcase it. And I've seen more of these added each year. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, well, there's a few reasons behind it. One is, we're kind of bored. We have nothing to do. So we say, let's do some more showcases. No, but what works best, that the ultimate goal is the national tournament, and what really determines teams that qualify. A lot of it has to do with the rankings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the rankings per division is only as good as the schedule is. So a lot of times some of our teams don't have the wherewithal or the budget or so forth to go outside their leagues to play. But what really makes the rankings work is I call it cross-pollination, right? So you have teams in one league playing teams in another league, and then they go play teams in another league, and so on and so on. Well, that makes us much stronger ranking. So the more we can do with in-season tournaments where we have teams that are playing teams that they would not necessarily compete against during the season, just enhances that whole algorithm, and thus at the end the national rankings, right? So Joe Caprio from Capper Hockey Services, we brought him aboard to manage those in-season tournaments for us. This past week, we had the big classic, which you call the Big Ten tournament. We had UCLA there playing. We had all the Big Ten, the original Big Ten schools there. So when would UCLA be able to play Michigan State or play Indiana University? They wouldn't have. So it was a great experience for the kids, but more, also it's a great way to enhance that algorithm to, maybe make our national rankings a lot more, a little more teeth into it. So it's great to see. It's great to see these things pop up. We're committed to doing it. The ACHA is using some of our revenue money of those events from the broadcasting standpoint to offset some expenses for the host. And we hope to continue to do more and more.
Well, Craig, I appreciate you taking time out tonight to be with us. It's always great to catch up with you. Can't wait for, I know I don't want to wish the holiday season away, but that means after that, we can start really looking forward to St. Louis. And it's such a great time of the year. Love being down there to be a small part of it. Good luck the rest of this year, and have fun in Italy. Have some pasta and gravy with me for me over there, and look forward to seeing you in 2025.
I appreciate it, Lou. You've always been a huge fan of ours, and appreciate everything you do. And looking forward to some turkey and gravy before Italy comes. So wish you and your family happy Thanksgiving. Everyone else listening, have a great, safe holiday season.
All right. Thanks, Craig. Craig Barnett, the Executive Director of the ACHA, kind enough to stop on with us here and talk, help us take a look back at head coach Mike Petrusma from Calvin, trailblazer, of course, of the ACHA, is kind of what our theme is here of the show tonight, taking a look back at one of the best that the ACHA has ever had. Calvin head coach Mike Petrusma, who passed away over the weekend at the age of 61. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk to one of his proteges, the head coach of the defending men's ACHA Division I, Adrian Bulldogs. Gary Astalos is going to join us. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back with that right after this here on 12 Ounce Sports and the ACHA Power Play. Hi, everybody. Welcome back again to the ACHA Power Play live here on 12 Ounce Sports and our YouTube channel, the 12 Ounce Sports Network. We invite you to follow us there, as you'll see all of our content. And also you can watch us live on X, on our X feed, if you will, 12 Ounce Sports, and my personal one at The Real Captain Lou. And follow us all over on social media. Let's continue with our tribute to head coach Gary Petrusma, with bringing in the head coach of the Adrian Bulldogs. He, the defending men's Division I Adrian Bulldogs, kind enough to join us on short notice, Gary Astalos. Gary, thanks for taking time out. How are you?
Hey, thanks, Lou, for having me on. Definitely appreciate it, and any opportunity to honor Coach Petrusma is an opportunity I definitely would want to take. So appreciate you having me on.
Oh, absolutely. You know, obviously we were all, shocked by it, but so you guys obviously proteges, if you will, colleagues. When did you first meet Mike? And tell us a little bit about your first few interactions with Coach Petrusma.
Yeah, I met Coach Petrusma when Calvin was transitioning from ACHA Division III to ACHA Division I, and they were going to join the Great Lakes Collegiate Hockey League. And I would say that like our relationship definitely strengthened over the last couple years. We got, I would say, a lot closer. Even probably a year before we both went over to Romania, we actually worked together a ton on selecting those rosters and picking each other's brains. And I think that's where I got a real true sense of, Mike being a real role model for me, especially being a little bit younger in the league. You look for the right mentors and people that do things the right way. And, Mike was someone I really gravitated to, and not just me. I mean, I would say Carl Trozian would say the exact same thing. And I mean, all the guys in our league, Billy Carr, Phil Sweeney, a lot of us really lean on Mike in those big decisions and us kind of breaking off and doing, our own league. I think all of us would echo that. Mike, really had the strongest voice in the room and someone we trusted and leaned on and led the way for us. So, I think, a lot of things kind of come to mind, a lot of emotions come to mind, but when I think about Mike, I think about going to play Calvin a couple of years ago, and I'm wearing my sweats when I get there. He's wearing his sweats, and we sit in the lobby and we talk for 2 hours.
Isn't that something?
Like I got to rush to the bus to throw my tie on in time for warm-ups because we just kind of get lost, talking, know. And I remember him he's like, "Hey, did you see our locker room renovations yet?" And I was like, "No." And I'll never forget this. It's like 10 minutes before warm-ups. Like, you got to see this. And he's showing me like their new kitchenette with like how they have the breakfast for the guys. And it was just like, just a true sense of like, we're going to battle it out on the ice. But, before the first period starts and after the third period ends, it was a true friendship. So, a lot of emotions come to mind, but nothing but respect for him and Josh and the Petrusma family for sure.
I didn't mention this I had Mark VanVliet from Aquinas on at the top, and, he's known him since he was a student, but I remember, I'll never forget this, Gary, was when they played Aquinas down in Columbus in 2017 in the final. And it was such a hard fought victory for Aquinas and a heartbreaking loss for them. And I'm walking and I see Mike standing. It was like a half hour after everybody was celebrating, and he was in the lobby down there. And I had talked to him a handful of times, and he's like, "Lou, what'd you think of that game, huh? Pretty fun, eh? I bet you were happy to be able to broadcast that." And we talked for a half hour. And that always stuck out to me even before this. He will talk hockey with you. He would talk for, like you said, hours if you could. And it's just amazing.
Yeah, 100%. And I was talking to Carl Trozian yesterday, and I think we're all still in shock, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we really digested this yet. But he's like, because we've been keeping in touch with Mike through this whole thing, the last whatever. And he's like, I had a tough weekend a couple weeks ago, and first call I get on Monday morning is literally, "Hey, bud, how you doing?" from Mike. And I was like, man, we had a brutal weekend like 6 weeks ago. Same thing for me. Like Monday morning, Mike calls and he's checking on you. Like he can talk hockey, but he really does. He just cares so much about other people, and that's what I'm gonna miss most. Getting those phone calls when you kind of need one, and he was always able to do that for us, and especially in our league. I mean, there's some really tight guys, and it's just crazy to think about.
I'm glad you brought that up about your league, about, the GL6. I've noticed that with your coaches, and it's not just the league though. The ACHA is such a tight knit group of coaches and even former players, they kick the crap out of each other on the ice, but boy, once it's done, and it's one thing I've always admired over the years about all of you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The news kind of broke here a little bit ago, and the first text that I get is from Matteo De Giulio, who played for Mike for Team Canada in Romania,
Mm-hmm.
and he's devastated. And I talked to Matt DeCesare this morning about it because we were just talking about the arrangements and stuff, and it's just like, man, like, how many players has that guy coached? Like, we're talking hundreds upon hundreds, right?
Yeah.
But then with the Team Canada, he coached kids from 12 different schools. So I mean, just how many players he touched and connected with, and I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head and how many guys like truly gravitated towards him and respected him. And I know my guys who played for him absolutely love the opportunity just to play under him. So it's, yeah, as you mentioned, it's a lot of people for sure.
So I know one of the things, and I know he's very proud of, was you being named the head coach going to Torino in January. My first question to you, Gary, is how's your Italian? Have you brushed up on it?
Yeah, no, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. It's tough because when we were in Romania, it's so much of that is Hungarian, and I actually got by a little bit because we have a pretty strong Hungarian background.
Okay,
but Italian, I'll be lost. So I'm just gonna go over and enjoy the hockey, enjoy the food, and try to make the best of it.
Boy, you better have an extra helping of some pasta for me over there when you get there. I was unable to tell Craig and all the directors that they needed a media specialist to go with you guys over there. So maybe next trip.
100%.
So, I remember, the process of selecting the players. How difficult was that for you, Gary?
It was really difficult. Like this year was extremely tough because we were kind of expecting a tournament in April or May, kind of similar to the last World Cup.
Oh yeah.
And then we kind of got thrown this really late. Like I think maybe July, and we had to have the roster selected by October. So you're really kind of rushing the process, in my opinion. Definitely we didn't have enough time to truly kind of physically get out and watch everyone. We had to use a lot of film and use a lot of coaches' recommendations, which is fine. But I think 2 years ago we had a little more time and we could watch the players during the season, and so it was extremely difficult. But I think we did a good job of bringing in a group that they have high motors. The kids all have high motors. They have high compete, high work ethic. We've done the research on. I think from a character standpoint, we just got a room full of good dudes and guys that are hungry to win and going to be bought in to play for a team. So I think we got a diverse group. I'm really happy with our group, and it's going to be a challenge for sure. But we'll be up to it. That's for sure.
With a young family, where do you find time to do all this, Gary?
Yeah, it's tough, but my kind of like for the national tournaments and stuff, my mom and my mother-in-law, they're gonna kind of move in with us while I'm gone for the 3 weeks. But I'm super fortunate to have a rock star wife that will support me and kind of doing all these things. And at the end of the day, this is probably a bucket list thing too. In 19 for Russia, I was on the advisory committee, and then in 21, was that the one that was canceled? Now I'm kind of drawing a blank.
Yeah.
With COVID. So just it's one of those things where you can't say no to it, and I'm truly honored that Brian Moran, the GM, and the committee trusted me, and just something that I'm humbled and grateful to just be a part of.
And I think part of it too is this kind of goes back to something that you share with Coach Mike and a lot of the coaches. Is I could tell with you, Gary, is your passion for the game and coaching these young men, and you find time, and it's not a job. when it's that, and I can tell how much you enjoy it.
I do. And, yeah, I'm a proud ACHA guy through and through. I've been in the league. This is my 9th year, believe it or not. And this is a great opportunity for our kids. And the fact, I guess Lake Placid too, for the last World Games, they went with an NCAA roster. So I forgot about that as well. So, for us, for our guys to get this opportunity, we can't take it lightly, right? We gotta go in and get everything we can. And Wyatt Wazelenchuk and Burns and Brian Moran and like Chad Berman, Brian Moran, all these guys that are on the staff have been all in and working their butts off, and the guys on the selection committee as well have been great. So yeah, I mean, and Craig Barnett, Paul Hebert, everyone's kind of pulled their boots up and been all in. So it's just, like I said, it's like you said, it's not work. It's just something we're passionate about for sure. So
with the timeline of this tournament, are you going to be back in the States in time to see the Lions in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's also remember, Lou, we haven't won a Thanksgiving game in 7 years.
Oh my gosh, I know, right?
We and like we're banged up right now too,
yes.
Right? So I'm hoping we can get some guys back for that game, but yeah, let's keep stacking wins. It's crazy that Minnesota keeps winning too. But let's keep stacking these wins. But yeah, we'll be back for that for sure.
It's the 1 year, like I heard the stat the other day, I think it was on Dan Patrick or whatever. The 1 year that Detroit gets to go 10-1, we're in a division where you've got 3 teams with 8 wins and through 12 weeks for the first time in 25 years. That's our luck, but we'll keep going with a 10-1 record, eh?
We will. I thought the curse was broken. I don't know why this happens to us, but yeah, it has to be the best division in football, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. It's really good.
Well, listen, Gary, I know you're busy. And this is such short notice. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about the coach, talking about Mike. It's he is going to be missed by everybody. His passion, like you said, and just his love of the game. It has spread, that's the one thing that I know it has spread throughout the state and the ACHA, and we'll still be able to feel it with everything that he's done for the ACHA here in Michigan and, throughout the world for that matter.
Yeah. Amen to that. And just to echo that point, Mike is forever going to be a legend of the ACHA. And I think he's someone that all of us are going to continue to strive to try and be like. And he truly was, I mean, if not the greatest ACHA coach, and he's just an unbelievable human and father figure and mentor. And I mean, you name it, he was it. So, we'll try to honor his legacy to carry ourselves like him. And then on a secondary point, just again, appreciate you having me on, Lou. And, appreciate all you do for the ACHA and always traveling down to the national tournament and being on those broadcast calls that are first class. So just appreciate all your support of the ACHA, and hopefully we'll see you down in St. Louis, or I'm sure I'll see you in Grand Rapids here soon.
All right, just remember those dogs can still hunt.
Absolutely. All right, my man. Thanks
all right,
so
Gary. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye-bye. Gary Astalos, the head coach of the Adrian Bulldogs, the defending men's Division I champions, and of course, head coach of the team going to Torino, coming up here shortly and in January. And again, some fond memories of the coach, Mike Petrusma from Calvin. All right, we're live here on the ACHA Power Play, and let's bring in our next guest. He got to know Mike real well as well. Longtime ACHA media personality. You saw him at the Nationals with his podcast. Some great interviews, including one with Coach Petrusma there as well. Dr. Rasty McGibbon. Rasty, thanks for taking time out tonight to be with us. Great to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing great, Lou. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a real honor to be on again.
Oh, the pleasure is all ours. Again, Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I wish it could be under better circumstances, but I wanted to have you on just to help celebrate the life of Coach Petrusma. Definitely a legend in the ACHA.
I would agree, and it's interesting. I've not really had not really known Mike all that long, and you can't really see it, but I wanted to show. I'm wearing my ACHA Team Canada wear.
Yes.
Right? So I do have the heat on in the house, but yeah, I put my jacket on. So when I was asked if I would go as the team physician in 2023 to Romania, I was also attending the national tournament at that time, which was in Boston. So I'd spoken to Craig and Paul, and I said, introduce me to as much as the coaching staff, that's here.
Yeah.
And so, probably when I connected with Gary Astalos for, the first time, also, the Team USA guys, Chris Rivera and Frank DiCristofaro, I met those guys. And I also met Mike. And, I think one of the things once the whole tournament's over, because the tournament's kind of a blur, right?
Yeah.
I think there were 8 games going on at one time at one point. But, the thing, as I drove back to Virginia from Boston, he was the kind of guy that you met and initially felt like you'd known him for such a long time. Yeah. And we talked about Canada, we talked about where he was from in St. Thomas, and myself from Southern Ontario, and we just talked about that and a little bit about the idea of going to Romania together. And so it was a really nice start to our friendship and acquaintance.
And so one of the things that always stands out, you mentioned that, and I've known Mike for about 9 years. It was back before the Nationals all came together in one spot. They put the D3 tournament on in Grand Rapids, and never met the man before. Came up and introduced myself, and we must have talked for a half hour just about Calvin, because I'd never been there. And he treated you like a long lost friend when you first meet him.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, obviously when you look at all of these, young men that come from, even from Canada, and sometimes move out of their native country and are, going to university or college and starting or away from home in the early, I think he had a very welcoming persona to him. He just had an aura that was warm and welcoming. And, I had a really awesome behind the scenes, getting to know all 6 of the guys, all 6 of the coaches and the players. But, these trips when the ACHA travels are really a unique experience because, you take, I don't know, 21, 22, 23 guys.
Yeah.
Some of them play together. Some of them have only played against each other. And sometimes the rivalries are pretty strong. And in a matter of a couple of days, you've got to make lines. You've got to basically take 21, 22 guys and form a team and go out there and try to win a medal. And to his credit, same thing that Gary Astalos had to do with Team USA. But I got to see a side of Mike there that probably was slightly different than might be day to day at Calvin.
Mm-hmm. He, so you had a chance to go over to Romania with him, and you got to know him a little more of a personal level. It just, I bet you could see the passion that he had, not only for the game, but for his players. And that's one thing I've always taken away from him, his passion. Mention the word Calvin, mention, a former athlete, former player of his, and you could just see the passion in his eyes.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you say that. To even take a step back, when I was doing medical residency in New York City, I kind of put this all together within about the last year or so. I had a Canadian student that was in our hospital. I got to know him, him and his wife, and actually we all went to see the Islanders in Pittsburgh play out on the island when I was living in New York City. And Justin had actually played for Mike at Calvin and was telling me all about his collegiate hockey experience. And so I knew about Mike before I even knew about Mike, right? and you know, coming, he's from Justin's from Nova Scotia, and moved to Michigan, had just an incredible experience playing hockey and you know, going to college in the States and then going on to medical school himself. But you know, I knew about Mike and the program even before I knew Mike. The other interesting thing is, you know, it was the first time in the history of the ACHA that they collected a group of players from the ACHA. And I even want to use the word harvested. They harvested a group of young men that were Canadians playing in the ACHA and Americans playing in the ACHA. And the Canadians, all three coaches were also Canadian. And so they were Canadian coaches coaching in the ACHA. So it was a really, really neat experience. For me, interestingly, and all the coaches joked about this, so I don't really feel that I'm like, you know, belittling them. Before we landed in Romania, all three coaches had gotten hurt. And so being a physician and the team physician, I actually was traveling with Team Canada. So the medical staff was myself and a trainer, Pete Carson. Pete Carson went ahead with Team USA. I stayed and went with Team Canada. So, you know, I probably got to know Mike and the other coaching staff from Team Canada slightly better because I was traveling with them. And by the time we even landed in Romania, I'd already treated all three coaches. So it was kind of a joke, you know, who needs more help, the coaching staff or the players? And I think in some ways, you know, it kind of broke the ice. But, you know, I saw him work with the guys. You know, there's all styles of coaching, almost like all styles of parenting. And you know, I really appreciated his gentle presence. And you know, I also know that the guys did as well. So it was really neat. But you know, you talk about his passion for hockey. When I had heard, you know, just several days ago when he passed away, I went back and listened to the podcast episode that he and I made together in Romania. And you know, I think in Canada, hockey is religion. I mean, it's as much religion as, you know, being Baptist is in the South, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for Mike, being able to have a career in hockey, and even, you know, have it overlap with his family in terms of his son coaching. And I don't know if both of his sons or just one of his sons coached alongside of him, but to parlay that into a career and to even kind of grassroots bring a college program up to the level it was, and then make the jump from D3 to D1. But then kind of the cherry on top of all that hard work, I think for him, was being able to stand on that bench and look out across a whole line of red jerseys on the blue line that all had Canada on. And he looks down his jacket and it actually has this exact same
Yeah.
day. And I mean, you know, he loved hockey. I went back and listened to the podcast. He loved his wife, Kristen. He loved his boys, Josh and Michael, and his grandkids. But, you know, I think he was a proud Canadian as well. And, you know, to be able to represent your country in hockey on the international stage, I think was just an incredible experience for him.
Okay. I have to ask you, how did the three coaches get hurt before you got to Romania?
Okay. So, one coach was, and I'm not going to say which one was which. Okay.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. I think I can tick the HIPAA box. Okay. One coach was standing up on kind of in the, you know, in the cubby.
Yeah.
Locker room, and didn't realize that the step down was as much as it was. And when they stepped down, they fell right back and smoked their head on a cement floor.
Oh,
That's
yikes.
one. Someone else I think, fell down in the parking lot on the asphalt and actually got cut open and was bleeding.
Oh, geez.
Okay. The third person probably was the most serious, and on and I don't even know what the name of the Polish airline is, but they serve tea that I guarantee you is in excess of 200 degrees Fahrenheit in the cup.
Oh, my Lord.
And it unfortunately got dumped on the coach, and they had pretty extensive burns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I mean, like the jokes. I mean, like the jokes just flowed. For the entire time of which coach is going to get hurt next, or is it going to be a player, right, and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it really kind of broke the ice.
Boy, you had to put them in bubble wrap pretty quick, huh?
Jeez, yeah, it was. But I mean, retrospectively, that's what I went to do, and the coaches, the staff, whoever, I'm all on board, and and keeping them safe and healthy, and
Well, Rasty, one of the things I know Mike was really excited about and proud of is the ACHA, how it has expanded, especially the national tournament scene now, the way it is, where everybody convenes in St. Louis, and how much he really looked forward to going to that. I remember last year talking to him about it right after their last game in Grand Rapids. We must have talked about it for 45 minutes at least, if not longer. And, that scene has really taken off in the last 5 to 7 years. And, it has really become something special. And I know he, amongst a lot of people, have been a catalyst behind it.
I agree 100%. I mean, one thing every year when I have the opportunity to speak with the ACHA Executive Director, Craig Barnett, one of the phrases that he uses, and it took me a little time to kind of, I'm not going to say buy in, but to kind of fully grasp what he meant, is the player experience.
Yeah.
And, I think when you have, and I'm remembering back to Boston in 23, there was 126 games. There were 78 teams represented.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you come to something of that magnitude, as a coach, as a player, as a trainer, as the team manager, as the, I even know with Army, like they send an officer that's, kind of an oversight. It's an incredible experience. I mean, one of the questions that I recycle and ask is, what have you thought about being at the national tournament? And they're like, I came in, and I saw all the banners, and I'm just like in awe. And you know what? It's the same thing for the coaches. I mean, like, they come out for warm-ups, the banners on their bench. And if you look at where the ACHA has come from, okay, next year will be 20 years from me. It's guys that have put the time in and the blood, sweat, and tears, like Mike Petrusma, that make the ACHA what it is. I mean, like they have carried it on their backs through the scant years to make, when we show up in St. Louis, this monster, incredible thing that, people come to that don't even have a kid or a grandkid in the tournament, because they hear, hey, the ACHA national tournament's here in St. Louis. And, they come and buy a pass and just watch a bunch of collegiate hockey. And it's an awesome experience and value.
Oh, it certainly is. It has come such a long way. And, I can remember, I've heard your stories with Dave Kurtz back in the D2 days. And, the level of play at these national tournaments has definitely improved, and the technology and the whole 9 yards. And you're right. The experience, not just for the players, but the fans, and the coaches, it really is something to behold.
Oh, it is. It is. But, and going back to your point, Mike was sold out on the ACHA.
Yeah.
I mean, the ACHA he cared about passionately. I mean, you have to realize, to leave your home, okay, to travel, I don't know, it felt like it was 17 hours to get to Romania, to then get on a bus to go 5 hours up in the Carpathian Mountains, okay, to to get into bed at 5 a.m. and have practice at 10. It's got to be a labor of love. I mean, like, people don't do that to their body intentionally, right? And so I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, how much he loved the ACHA, how much he was on board with the mission, which is several things. It's the opportunity for some kids that would never pursue higher education to come and get an education while they participate in the sport that they love. And I'll be honest, I mean, this is college hockey. You don't need to look any further than this. This is college hockey. I mean, what are we, 529 teams in the ACHA?
Yeah.
Over 10,000 players. I mean, and Mike is a huge part of that. I mean, like, he's a builder in that. He was bought in. I mean, he was if you think of a sales model, he was a distributor for ACHA.
One of the things that he told me, this was, this was, I want to say 7 years ago now. It was right after the national tournament. And he said one of his sales pitches, and it's so true because, like I said, you've met one of his players, is we are, this brings you an education that's going to further you in life. And as a bonus, you get to play hockey at a high level. And it couldn't be more further from the truth.
No, exactly. And from knowing Gary Astalos, from knowing Mike Petrusma, hockey in Michigan, and this is probably not going to be a popular statement, it is a hotbed for the entire country. Yeah. I mean, it really is. I'm not saying that there's not good hockey in other parts of the country. There is hockey in all parts of the country, right? Like, last year, I really discovered there is some incredible hockey going on in Montana, right? Like, if you were just like an ACHA fan, you're like, man, I'm going to go. They have this midnight game in Montana, and it is like off the charts raucous. Okay, but day in and day out, Mike coached, and he built a program in a very, very competitive environment and hockey hotbed, and he was successful at it. I mean, because you know what, to jump from D3 to D1, that's a jump.
Oh boy, some teams have never been able to get to a level of success like that. I know how difficult that is. I've seen it too. And Rasty, I think one of the things that he's probably most proud of, and he told me this was about a month ago or so, we were talking in his office, is one of his former players is now the head coach of the D3 team, Austin Heisinger. And, it is like, one of his kids. And, it's to see that carried on, I know how much that meant to him.
Oh, and you know what? I actually met Austin at Nationals. And Mike introduced, and you're 100% right. Like, he would not have been any prouder had it been one of his own sons. I mean, the lineage and the investment in young men, young people to turn them into men during their time there at Calvin was super important to him. And, we had one of his players who actually, went to Romania and played for Canada. And, he just the entire time was there, sung Mike's praises of how he was as a coach and just the way he handled himself. He handled his interactions with players. And, it was really great to see. And, he and I got along. We joked. We, I when I heard he passed away, I'd post something on Facebook, and I had interviewed him. Kind of the awesome thing about going on these trips as a physician. One, I'm nonpartisan, right? So I'm just the doctor, right? You know what I mean? You get hurt, the doctor. You know what I mean? I'm obviously cheering for the ACHA, but in the final game, it was ACHA Canada versus ACHA United States.
Yeah.
I only had to work one game that day, so I was great, right? but I still have players and coaches contact me.
That's great.
I think that's the greatest compliment. But if you go back and you actually watch the interview I did with him at Nationals last year, we're sitting there talking and we're having such a good time that we're finally like, okay, I guess we better get serious so we can actually do the interview. But like, if you watch, as soon as the camera cuts in, we've actually just been laughing our heads off because he was that kind of guy, right? And like I've known him, to date, I've known him less than really 2 years, but there was that there was that connection that I really attribute so much more to him than to me, and he just had that welcoming feel about him. But yeah, we got to talk hockey, we got to talk going to Romania, we got to talk about Canada. It was great.
Was that your son in the background complaining about Toronto taking another penalty?
Probably. It probably is. It probably is. Yeah.
What's up with our Red Wings and Maple Leafs, man? Are we ever going to get back to glory?
I come by this naturally, Lou. I
wish I could grow mine, man.
Yeah. I was going to give you a comment on the beard. I kind of like that.
Well, I'm portraying somebody, if you know who I mean here, coming up shortly after Thanksgiving. Gotcha. That's why I'm doing it.
That's good. That's good. I'll be honest. I don't know. I'm an old school guy. I like Berube. So I hope that he can squeeze some blood out of a rock come playoff time, and we'll just have to see. So
boy, at least you're going to get there. I really want Derek Lalonde to succeed in Detroit, but I don't know. I don't know if he's going to make it through. I heard the hot rumor going around now is Quenneville's coming here. I don't know if it's good or bad.
Well, I mean, Quenneville's an old school guy.
Yeah,
Quenneville's an old school guy, and he has spent his time in purgatory. So it's nice that Bettman will allow him to do what he does well.
Well, I hope you're right, and you're exactly right. I agree with you 1,000%. Rasty, this has been fun. We're kind of up against it, but anytime I get a chance to catch up with you, it's great. I hope you have a good holiday season, and can't wait to catch up with you in person in St. Louis in about 3.5 months, 4 months. It's coming soon.
Sounds great. Yeah. Well, happy Thanksgiving to you and your wife, and Merry Christmas as well. And my most sincere condolences to Josh and Michael and his family.
Same here. All right. Thanks, Rasty, again, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Thanks.
You bet. All right. The doctor, Rasty McGibbon, joining us here on the ACHA Power Play. And again, I want to thank everybody for taking time out to be with us here tonight. Mark VanVliet, the director of hockey, the longtime director of hockey operations in the Grand Rapids area with Aquinas. Of course, you coached at Davenport. A longtime friend of Coach Petrusma, and thank him for his time. The director of hockey operations, Craig Barnett, and Gary Astalos, the head coach of Adrian, and of course, Dr. Rasty McGibbon, all sharing some great stories, looking back with fondness. And I guess, like I said, we can all agree on one thing with Coach Petrusma is his passion for not only Calvin University, which it was great, Calvin hockey, the ACHA, but most of all for his wife and his kids and his grandchildren. It was cool to see him running around, his grandchildren in their new hockey offices this year. And, all you had to do is start talking anything about hockey. And Mike was very gracious with his time with me. Again, I first met him in 2016 in February, I think it was, when they played Aquinas for the first time. And I always like to talk to the coaches before the games and ask him if he'd be on my podcast. And I got the look, and I thought, oh man. And then he started laughing. He said, anytime, Lou, I'll talk ACHA hockey with you anytime. And he did. And that is something that I will always cherish. And, it's the ACHA has again lost a great man, but his memory will last forever. And he definitely will be missed. And so I thought it was apropos that we would take a look back at his, at his legacy. And just again, he's one of the good ones, and he definitely will be missed. Again, his record at Calvin, 520, 210, and 37, a 2004 national championship at the D3 level, and numerous trips to the national tournament at D1 and D3. Even as a soccer coach, as Mark VanVliet mentioned, 74, 28, and 2 as a women's soccer coach at Calvin, helping keep that program at the elite status that it is at Calvin. So, Coach, you will be missed. Rest easy. Thank you for the memories. Thank you for all of your wisdom and for all of your help that you've given me. And you've made my journey with the ACHA so much better. And I will always be grateful for that. So, all right, again, that's going to do it. I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving holiday. The road to St. Louis and the ACHA Power Play. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another live episode. I'm going to take a little vacation myself next week. Going to go down to Arizona. But when we come back, we're going to hit the ground running, as it will instead not be the marathon anymore. It will be the sprint for the road to St. Louis in 2025. When it hits December and January, it is definitely go time. So one more time, I want to thank Mark VanVliet, Craig Barnett, Gary Astalos, and Dr. Rasty McGibbon for helping us make this an extra special show here tonight, remembering the life and the career of one of the great ones in ACHA lore and Calvin University head coach Mike Petrusma. All right, to all of you, thank you. I really appreciate you. We appreciate you welcoming us into your homes, on your computer, your laptops, however you're watching around the world here on the ACHA Power Play on 12 Ounce Sports. All right, that's going to do it. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Just a reminder, keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the ACHA Power Play. So long.